The name's Rex. She'll call me Captain.
What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith?
The shroud of the dark side has fallen.
Calling fives. On heavy.
Begun. The Clone War has.
You're listening to The World Between Worlds, a Star Wars podcast where four Star Wars fans, film enthusiasts, are going into the entire Star Wars chronology, leading all the way up to Episode 9. We're picking up with another 3 episodes in the Clone Wars, or if you're just tuning in and want a little recap, we will be talking this week about 3 totally random episodes.
Sometimes they have to do with Mandalore.
Specifically, we'll be talking about Season 3, Episode 5, Corruption, Episode 6, The Academy, and Episode 7...
The Assassin.
My name's Yates.
My name's Jordan, and I messed up the title.
My name's Keats, and I helped him out with that.
And we're here to talk Star Wars. Anakin and Obi-Wan, not as present in this arc. Instead, we're focusing on different characters. Specifically, over 2 episodes, we check in a lot with Ahsoka, who's been missing intermittently since, like, Season 2, where she was...
KIA.
Yeah, Ahsoka's been killed in action. No, she was just grounded.
I think she needs some time away from the battlefield.
On archive security, reflect on your actions you can, Padawan.
Guard duty? For how long?
Longer now.
Yeah, thank God, because now Anakin and Obi-Wan are taking the backseat for a bit. And, you know, I'm glad we got a lot of Obi-Wan in the last, or 2 episodes ago. Pardon me. But... I'm tired with them at this point. I really wanted some more Ahsoka on screen.
So, Episode 5, Corruption.
There's Poison Red Bull.
Poison Red Bull, yes. Hard pan back to Mandalore and to Duchess Satine, who we had just met like a week or so ago. And Mandalore is in a fragile state right now after, you know, it was the subject of a lot of intrigue, a lot of eyes on them from the Republic and the Separatists. And what do you know? The Red Bull's been spiked. Kids are getting sick in the streets. And who's there to help?
Padme.
Thank you for coming, Padme. I know our decision to stay neutral has caused distress in the Senate. But for many here, the fallout from your war has been too much.
If your government has trade concerns, we can talk. Many systems have been affected. I assure you, not everyone in the Republic has neglected Mandalore.
Previously in Clone Wars in the Mandalore arc, we were introduced to this culture for the very first time. We know that they're, you know, highly technological. We know that after many, many years of war, Mandalore is striving to be a totally peaceful and pacifist state. And also, I think they are formally a part of the Republic, but they are mavericks. They're doing it all on their own. At the close of the arc, however, Mandalore has undergone like a huge lineup change. The band is broken up. So many of Satine's close friends and allies are now in jail or dead, and it's not looking good. The morale of Mandalore isn't quite the same as the proud culture that we were introduced to in the very first episode of that arc. And at the start of this episode, when Padme does land on Mandalore to assist, and it's essentially, it's all for show. I mean, Padme is there to...
I mean, the whole parade is, aren't they thanking her? Because she's the one who, delivered the footage in the last episode.
Is that why?
That's what I assumed,
That's what I assumed.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Y'all are right?
There's a part in that scene where Satine says, "We are a people of tradition." And to me, that was like a very tongue-in-cheek reference to the polar opposite sides of how the Death Watch and the Mandalorians have different ideas of how to maintain tradition. Very obviously. I don't know why I'm explaining this.
well, I mean, that's a good point, because I think when we maybe talked about it during the Mandalore episode, there was like a disconnect when we were all talking about, like, when we talk about Mandalore, what version of Mandalore are we talking about? Because the two versions are very different. Like, we have this absolutely pacifist Mandalore and this absolute warrior culture Mandalore.
Well, I mean, technically, it's only the pacifists right now, because there's only all those warmongering people aren't even on the planet.
Yes, that's true. Well, but to be fair,
they're dwelling.
But to be fair, in this arc, we're sort of, peeling back and getting a closer look, and we find out that Mandalore is really just as corrupt as the Republic.
That's true. In the first arc, we found out that Mandalore is corrupt, and in this one, we find out that Mandalore is corrupt.
But this time with T.
True. That's true. Well, I mean, I guess the difference would be in the first arc, like, they're corrupt because there's a terrorist organization, like, that's secretly growing inside of Mandalore. And in this one, it's just like, everyone in power just wants money, which is the same deal as the Republic.
Dude, Mandalore had a bad week.
It had a bad week.
I enjoyed seeing the black market side, just like seeing some low scummy smugglers rather than some like giant political fiasco going on.
Yeah,
it just took a break from all the heavy shit that's happening.
Yeah, like
it's
the big
more
scope.
It's more down to
scope.
earth. Like, it's more relatable. Like, now we don't have to like imagine what Padme feels like walking into the Senate chamber.
Yeah.
Instead, now we have to just imagine, like, there's this scummy guy on the street like selling cheap stuff to for huge profit.
Right, and there's just some shitty guidance counselor trying to make a quick buck.
Yeah, there you go.
So then after Padme's big parade, she arrives at the Mandalorian Senate room, and this is where things got a little bit interesting to see how Padme talks, because it's kind of been relevant to her character, but it's never she's never been put into a situation where somebody is like able to call her out on something, and in this moment she's like trying to support everyone's idealship by saying, "Oh, it's okay, the Senate can help you guys out because obviously your system is corrupt," and then everyone's like, who the hell are you to talk about corruption?
You are right. New trade routes are essential to survival. But the black market is no substitute for legitimate and legal trade.
What would you propose, Senator?
The Republic can provide security.
The Republic's own dealings with the black market far surpass Mandalore's.
I agree. It's quite hypocritical of you to come here, a member of the Republic Senate, and lecture to us about corruption.
Mandalore cannot pretend
This is the price of
favor of our past.
The corporate alliance controls everything.
Silence.
Yeah, that's like Padme's pretty big Achilles heels, that she always like depends on the Senate to help support her arguments for things, but in all reality, like, what she's defending is straight up like
a corrupt system.
A corrupt system and an empire waiting to happen.
Am I misremembering, or is there a line where Padme says that, there's always going to be good people in the Senate, and, that calls to mind the previous Mandalore arc where, like, Satine had to rely on Padme, and then we get this sweeping shot where we see senators that we do know and trust, like Mon Mothma and Rio Chuchi. But yeah, those are like two people in a gigantic stadium of like thousands and thousands of star systems.
Literally.
So she does lose that argument in the in the scene in the palace or whatever. But then afterwards, Satine and Padme have a more personal conversation at dinner. Probably that was my favorite scene in that episode. It's the one that I remember the most. It's another example I kind of think of, like, we learned new sides about Obi-Wan in the other episode, and the sort of like what if scenarios, which are always fun in Star Wars. But Padme just says, sometimes I wish I could, be more like you and not be a part of the war. And then she even goes further to say, not just not be a part of the war, but like be separate from the Republic and make decisions for my own planet by myself.
Yeah, I peeled an onion layer off of her. Like, she just keeps getting deeper and deeper the more we get to know her.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think it really reminds us of the Padme from The Phantom Menace, who is in a scenario where she's like fed up with the Senate and it just has to leave.
Senator, this is your arena. I feel I must return to mine. I've decided to go back to Naboo.
Go back? But Your Majesty, be realistic, they'll force you to sign the treaty.
I will sign no treaty, Senator. My fate will be no different than that of our people. Captain,
Your Highness?
ready my ship.
Please, Your Majesty, stay here where it's safe.
It is clear to me now that the Republic no longer functions. I pray you will bring sanity and compassion back to the Senate.
And that's something that I don't feel like is referenced enough, because by the time she comes back in Attack of the Clones, she's like all into the Senate again. But in Phantom Menace, she's like, I'm done with this. I'm going to solve my problems on my own.
I think it's just like in the Phantom Menace, she was literally like 14 years old, so she had like that brash independence that a child has. But now that she's an adult, she sees like how there is like very, very strong support within the Senate that can really benefit planets and many galaxies alike. I think the consistency in the character is that in the Phantom Menace and after the Phantom Menace, she wants to help people. So I think the fact that she's joined the Senate isn't inconsistency necessarily, because I think at the end of the day, she feels like she can help more people in the Senate.
If I remember correctly, in some episodes, like, she is like shut down by like the Senate in whatever like vote or.
Oh yeah, even in the Clone Wars, that's true. Like, she gets shut down.
And I feel like she didn't take action like she did in the Phantom Menace.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think whenever she approaches a moment where the Senate shuts her down, she usually takes it upon herself to help whoever is in need. So after the dinner scene where they say something like, okay, well, after like all this nonsense bickering, let's like cheer ourselves up by going to see these new volunteer workers at this new hospital, and that'll like lift up our spirits. And so they go there and they see like all these patients everywhere, like everyone's moaning and crying.
The hospital's working.
The hospital, it's working. And anyway, and then she pulls her friend aside, Order Lee, and then she's like, hey, what's happening? And then the order is like, there's like some kind of poison going on with the food. We have no idea what's going on. And that's where we find out that, she says at some point it's like all over the planet. It's like a planet-wide thing.
Yeah, that seemed weird to me, but that's,
Ignore it. Throw it out.
Yeah.
It's very self-contained. It's in this little bubble. So it's like one school of like 300 kids or something like that. A lot of kids are being poisoned. And I think they say like the future of Mandalore is being poisoned right before our eyes or something like that.
Yeah, I think Satine says that. So, I mean, I think that it doesn't justify Satine's, sort of change, but it definitely is, what the story wants us to think is, this is the immediacy of what's going on is, the kids are sick in the hospital and Satine is done with this stuff, and her and Padme go off on the mission.
Maybe when you bring kids into the mix, that's what throws her off the edge, but we don't really know that.
But she doesn't have that moment where she says anything like that or hints at anything like that.
Especially since we know her so well after just a short amount of time. She's such an established character with just 3 episodes of the Clone Wars, and now that we're continuing off, any sort of contradiction there is, maybe a little jarring.
But all of those 3 episodes
are consistent with each other.
Are consistent with her beliefs, and her and Obi-Wan are constantly having arguments because they have opposite ideals of this whole war.
Of what peace is.
Yeah, what peace is.
A peacekeeper belongs on the front lines of conflict. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to do his job.
The work of a peacekeeper is to make sure that conflict does not arise.
Yes, a noble description, but not a realistic one.
Is reality what makes a Jedi abandon his ideals? Or is it simply a response to political convenience?
And so to just turn that around so abruptly just feels weird.
The thing that really bothered me most of all about Satine's choices was when we get to the end of the episode and they're infiltrating this this tea factory, whatever. They make tea with dangerous, highly volatile chemicals. Sure, it's Star Wars. Okay, fine. And anyway,
the tea is only poisonous when it's a certain amount.
Combined in a certain way with certain
if you put
things.
too much of it in. That's why he said you got to get your
But why would they
dosage
highlight that? I mean, that applies for anything in real life. But
it's like drugs.
They're making it sound like it's a very you have to be really steady with it or else you're going to die.
I feel like this was a representation of drugs, because when they have heroin or coke or whatever, they always mix something else in it so it's not as potent and they can get more coke.
Yeah.
But it's a kids show, so they can't be oh, this is death sticks or whatever because it's drugs. So they just made it a drink.
Yeah, it's possible, but either way, I mean, if you can't get that item of significance of a drug or whatever, and you have to swap it out for tea, no one in the audience is going to understand that unless you dissect it on a podcast. Satine is like orders her trooper to like bust open like the factory to see like what's going on in there, and Satine just gives the order to fire at will, and it's like, who are you? I mean, like, this is an inner character. I mean, I feel like I don't want to say like I feel betrayed or anything, because that's like pretty exaggerating. That's exaggerating a bit, but it's just Satine was like a completely different person like yesterday.
Yeah, there's a line in the third episode where I think, or it might have been the second episode, in Voyage of Temptation, Satine basically says anyone can be reasoned with and negotiated with.
Maybe she's like acting crazy in this episode because she's angry about the whole Obi-Wan ordeal. She misses him.
I mean, understandable, but
nothing's ever said about that. I mean, there's like a whole number of reasons why she could be upset. Probably like the children would be like the most easy thing to jump to.
I think I'm just trying to justify it in my brain.
That's exactly. Yeah, I feel like it should have been.
That never has to happen in Star Wars. I wish we could have recorded Jordan's face.
We'll like import it into the sound waves. But yeah, just like they're not even like holding like the deactivator thing from a couple episodes ago, or any like they don't even have regular blasters on stun. Like they actually, you can see like when they shoot that they're leaving like the burn marks in the victims. Like it's straight up gunfire. So that like really bugged me like a lot.
Wait, I think I cracked this.
Oh my god. You're gonna justify it even farther.
No, I'm not gonna justify it. I'm going hard the other way. The people that she shoots are outsiders, and she has a line where she well, I think at the beginning of the episode, Prime Minister Almec is like, can we trust, they don't know our ways, like we can't deal with them. And then Satine is like, don't worry, like my friends aren't like the other guys. Obviously they're isolationists because they're not involved with the war, but maybe they're a little xenophobic too, where like Satine has no problem like killing these gangsters from some random unknown regions planet, and maybe dehumanizes them a little bit.
But then why would she take them prisoner? She took a handful prisoner just because.
So she's like peacekeeper, but she's racist?
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
I mean, they're all white.
Yeah,
they're all white. I was literally thinking about this during the second episode.
Yeah,
I was just like, they're all white here with just English accents.
Yeah. And it's also
and
weird.
They're blonde and like blue-eyed. Like,
and that's the capital of the planet.
Purple's a hue of blue.
Oh my god.
But we know from Rebels that there are like other planets in the Mandalore system that consider themselves Mandalorian, and there's like a black Mandalorian, Asian Mandalorians. There's like, it's not like that in all of Mandalore, but in the capital where everything looks like Pablo Picasso playing Minecraft, they're all white.
So then Satine makes like the stupidest decision. It's a factory filled with drugs, and then she says burn it with fire. And then the guy like, he's like, then
what? It's evidence because I don't fucking care. Burn it.
Captain, I want you to burn down this warehouse.
Excuse me? But there's evidence.
Burn it down, or I'll consider you a part of this conspiracy, Captain.
You heard her, men. Burn the warehouse.
Yeah, I think
they all should have died.
I was so confused.
Don't watch this episode.
Yeah, I felt bad for that leader guy because
the
constantly,
police officer?
Yeah, the police officer, because constantly she was like, if you don't do this, I'm gonna throw you in jail. If you don't kill that person, I'm gonna throw you in jail. And he's like, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to be a good person. I don't care, be a bad person. I'm gonna throw you in jail.
I'm kind of on her side though for that, because he was really suspicious at first, because he was like,
he was sus.
Yeah, he was definitely sus. Stop being sus, or I'll throw you in jail.
So yeah, this episode was bad.
Make this episode bad, or I'll throw you in jail.
I mean, we've had a couple like rough episodes, but this is probably the worst episode, I think. I'm a pretty chill guy. I'm a pretty zen guy. I don't get angry a lot. I got very genuinely frustrated when the episode ended. And then the happy music started playing, and I was like, I am not happy.
In the next episode, because the corruption has not yet been fully stamped out, Satine sends a message to the Jedi Temple, and the Jedi send young little Ahsoka because, frankly, everyone else is too busy, in Anakin's own words.
The Jedi Council has given you a mission, Ahsoka. It's your duty to see it through.
Don't you think I'm just a little overqualified for this?
According to Senator Amidala, Mandalore is a deeply corrupt world. If the cycle is to be broken, the future leaders at the Royal Academy of Government must learn the evils of corruption. Yoda feels that only a young Padawan like you can get through to them.
And Ahsoka initially is a little peeved that she's sent on a mission to essentially do a guest lecture series.
Lecture a class on the most basic concepts. There's bad people? Yes, and bad people leads to bad things. Ahsoka's like, gotta be brave and speak out.
Yeah.
And expose them.
And then they do that.
And then no one believes them because they're kids anyway. So.
The episode starts off from Ahsoka's point of view, but very quickly it pivots towards these new group of characters who are all Mandalorian kids, which I don't think is something that the show's done before, and it felt fresh. We can argue about how effective it was, but we follow the story from their eyes predominantly afterwards, and Ahsoka and Satine helped them out in uncovering the conspiracy, but at the end of the day, it's the kids that are the focus of the story.
Yeah, we're not going to pretend like we know all their names. We have no idea what their names are.
Corky.
And?
Corky.
Got it.
So these are kids that grew up in this new pacifist Mandalore, and they are clearly, as Keats pointed out before, very sheltered and don't have grasp on some basic concepts. How old are they supposed to be? Are they supposed to be, I take it they're supposed to be like a little younger than Ahsoka, like 13?
I took it like 11, but...
They look older. They look like teenagers.
Yeah, they look like 13.
Yeah. They could be somewhere between that age, yeah.
They behaved like they were 11 years old. You're definitely right.
Yeah, that's probably why I'm thinking that. But so they take these lessons to heart and start to think and...
Start to think.
That's their problem.
And philosophize.
Falafel size?
Falafel. The size of this falafel.
Synthesizing falafel.
Listen. We've had a food shortage since the war began. Transport ships keep coming in, but there's strict rationing. Something is wrong on Mandalore.
But these problems are bigger than us. Just let the authorities handle it.
We have to do something about it, like Ahsoka said. Let's go down to the warehouse district and see if there really is a food shortage.
Beats sitting around here listening to my stomach growl.
My takeaway from these kids' characters, those kids are brave. I would definitely not do what they did and break into like a government warehouse.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't seem like something a 13-year-old would do.
Yes, and ultimately, what it's all about is corruption specifically, and I guess that is pretty valid. I know where you're laughing because it's so basic.
I'm laughing because every episode is about corruption.
That's true, but so Mandalore has gone through all of this, abrupt and immediate change. And, these kids, like I said before, they grew up in a Mandalore that, self-proclaimed pacifists. I do think it's valid to, tell the story from the kids' point of view of, trying to come to grips with understanding, why all this crazy political stuff in the past 3 episodes, what all that means at the end of the day to them. I think that's a good idea for a story. To me, though, I know you guys really liked this, a lot of this episode. I just thought it was so simplistic.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah, that's what Jordan said.
I thought it was okay. I didn't really like any of these episodes. I thought they were just all bland and whatever.
Okay.
I liked this episode.
Yeah, Keats is the one who was hyping this episode up.
I thought just how simple the story was portrayed and the idea of corruption was portrayed, or rather how simply corruption was fixed in this episode was sort of unintentionally comedic for what the story was trying to do. And because the whole startup of this episode is there's a shortage on food. Let's just go into the warehouse where all the food is, and then we'll find out where the food is.
Right.
And it's just wow, if it was that easy, everyone would do it.
Everyone would do it, yeah. Why
Not
didn't the
everyone's
adults?
a hacker, though.
That's true.
But they could have, had protests outside of the warehouse.
There could have definitely been more going
something.
on.
I'm sure, if you had, a bunch of Mandalorian adults, they could have, broken into it or somehow. Yes, when you're a kid, you're aware that, we don't have food, but, you're just like, oh, I'm hungry, we don't have food, and your parents are like, we don't have money, like we're struggling right now. Like they see the whole thing as like a whole.
I agree, but I do think it's like a consistent theme in Star Wars though, that kind of like kids have a little more clarity than the adults do. Like even in Phantom Menace, I think that's one thing I talked about, which is just that, you know, the whole reason Anakin and Padme are the heroes is like just because they're kids and they're like able to like, okay, all this politics stuff out of the way, like we're just gonna blow up the station and we're gonna take back our country because that's what we're gonna do. And
the first Star Wars, the original Star Wars.
Sure, I mean, yeah, Luke is like 18 or something, but yeah, you're right. And
but judging it for what it is, with the kids going in there, I mean, this is like when the plot hasn't even kicked in yet. So they go in and they see some sketchy trade going in, and then they're tasked with this responsibility of talking to the right people and reporting them to the right people. And I just thought that was like a really interesting way to handle like corruption, because every episode has been about corruption so far, and it's just it could have been really easy for it to just like get old, but I think because they executed it in a very unique way, that's what made me like the episode a lot.
I guess that's true. And I also, to the storyteller's credit, the kids also, you know, there's a learning curve because they make a lot of mistakes in their response to it. So, you know, it is kind of balanced. Like, it is overly simplistic, but because they're kids, they still do make mistakes.
I mean, I don't think it's as simplistic as you guys are making it out to be. They do like what they think they should do, which is ultimately like the right thing, which is just to report it. And, you know, obviously because they're children, they don't get the response that they were hoping for. When Prime Minister Almec throws them in jail, that's when they kind of get sidelined, and then it becomes more of like an Ahsoka story. And I thought that was like where the episode kind of kicks off into like a lot deeper, not just very simplistic.
That's true. And like we said at the beginning, Ahsoka is not really happy with her assignment initially, but as the plot begins to unfold and she realizes there's more going on in Mandalore and she might have more of a duty here than she initially thought, she is put in a leadership position, essentially.
Yeah, a leadership position and a teacher position. Or a mentor position, rather.
She's grown up.
Very much so. I remember when the episode started and Ahsoka was like in the forefront of the ship, and I was just thinking like, wow, we haven't seen Ahsoka in like almost a season. I'm just so happy that she's like doing missions again. She's not just like studying, you know?
I hated the scene when the 4 cadets went to get Satine's help because she's actually the aunt of Corky.
I thought that was really convenient.
Oh yeah, 100%. Just like, let's go talk to my Aunt Satine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, what a coincidence! What a coincidence! This crime.
Yeah. But yeah, they immediately like walk in, and then like 10 seconds later, she's just kicking them out and go do your studies. Like, she didn't even give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, they said, oh, we have proof. Like, they literally took a video and it's proof, and it looked super sus, and she didn't even like want to see it, didn't even bother.
This is a serious matter, I agree. But the source of this evil may be more than you cadets can handle. People can be very deceiving. You don't want to get yourselves into trouble.
But Auntie, don't you see? You can't ignore this.
I won't, trust me. But for your own safety, you must let me take care of it. Now run along, all of you. Concentrate on your studies. There will be a time to save the world when you're a bit older.
It felt like it wasn't even her. I honestly thought it was an imposter, and that's what I thought it was.
I mean, but you have to give her credit, because there's like, she says a lot, like more than once that she's like going to look into it and all this. And so I thought she would.
I thought that was her just brushing it off, though.
For me, I took that as like, because I trust her. So I thought she was actually going to look into it and try and work things out from the inside. Obviously, the direction of the episode didn't go that way, and the children didn't view it that way. But so I thought that by the time the end of the episode would come along, Satine would have been in a position politically of being able to like prove them right. In the moment of watching that scene, I didn't feel like Satine was betraying her character or anything. What about you?
Yeah, I think I'm more with Keats in that I just kind of assumed that she was telling the truth, even though I am with Jordan. It did kind of make me uncomfortable. Like, I was like, this is a weird way to react to this information. Just in general.
Her reaction was so weird.
Yeah, it was in general, I thought the reaction was weird, but I just took her at her word that she was going to look into it.
So when we get to the conclusion of the episode, Ahsoka actually hands over all 4 children to Prime Minister Almec in what is a very easy-to-tell switcheroo that is about to happen. And, you know, the Prime Minister knows that, and he sees it coming a mile away. So Ahsoka is confronted by the Prime Minister and is like, haha, I knew all along. bring the children out so I can torture them. It's like, why?
Yeah, he was like a pretty neutral character in the previous arc. Like, I mean, he's not super sus. I mean, of all the characters, I guess pre Vizsla is pretty.
I think he's pretty sus. His head is so big.
That's true.
It's a big old head.
But he went from not very sus to super sus in this, and like he's like a dime. He's totally evil now.
It is kind of out of nowhere, but at the same time, it's not.
Yeah, it's not. Well, I mean, at this point, like basically,
to.
you can't trust anyone in Mandalore except for Satine.
And we're used to her being betrayed.
Yeah.
So
I suppose
it's like not a shock. Oh, another white guy.
Well, good news is that pretty much everyone in Mandalore is gone. So so there's just Satine, I think. So I don't think there's going to be too many other betrayals left.
So Ahsoka arrests. Ahsoka like pretty much beats up every guard she sees, saves the kids, saves Satine, and arrests the Prime Minister in a very fast amount of time. And I thought all of that action choreography was pretty great.
It was great, and I will bring up my point again that I've made in previous episodes where they just like don't do the Jedi justice sometimes. Like, she overpowered those guards so easily, but then like Anakin can like barely fight like Hondo. Like, come on, like the Jedi are so powerful. Like, this is how I want to see my Jedi. Like, we'll see like Obi-Wan get captured in handcuffs and then he just won't do anything. She gets captured in handcuffs and then fights like 20 guards, and it's just like, yeah, she had help, but they were also in handcuffs like too. Like, I don't know.
Jordan's gonna bring up bounty hunters when we talk about episode 9.
What's episode 9?
Of Star Wars.
Oh, like episode 9?
Yeah, episode 9, our final episode is going to come, and then you're going to be like talking about bounty hunters and how you hated it.
Yeah, probably.
So at the end of the day, Olmec is exposed. He's sent to jail. In fact, in the very jail that Satine had been framed in and put in. So, Satine is free and she's the Duchess again. But I'm pretty sure Duchess Satine says directly that, the war on Mandalore, which I think she said in the previous Mandalore arc as well, but just like, this is really only just beginning, and now, she was being cut down for size so much in the previous arc. Now it's just sort of continuing, and Ahsoka leaves Mandalore to go back to Coruscant, a more learned Jedi than before, but Mandalore is still delicate, and its fate is still in flux. This is going to be I'm pretty sure this is going to be our last Mandalore episode for a while. How does everyone feel about where we left off here?
I really want to see more. I feel like there's so much story to be told. They lost like their head senator in like the last arc. Now they just lost
I want to see
prime minister. What's going to happen now? It probably might not be like the most action-packed stuff, but it might be a good political thriller like the episode in the last Mandalorian arc.
Yeah, this is like definitely the animated attempt at like a Star Wars political thriller angle, similar kind of to how they approached the Phantom Menace, and in a certain way. And I think this is a lot more successful at it. I'm very invested in this, like in this society, and I mean this comes from like this society comes from like a super fleshed out backstory, and I mean I know that like a lot of things were changed in order to accompany the Clone Wars storyline. But overall, just it looks great. It feels great. The storytelling is fantastic most of the time.
I think more planets and like societies on the planet should get more time focused on them, like Mandalore. Because like we said in like the previous episode, this is like the first time where we see like not just like a little village like in the middle of nowhere in like a planet. So you really get like attached to like the main characters and like the society as a whole. Like I actually really care about like Mandalore, and I want to see more Mandalore stories. And if they dedicate like arcs to like more political sides of other cultures, I think that'd be cool.
The final episode, Assassin. We are back on Coruscant with Ahsoka. She is recovering from her battles, both on Mandalore, as well as, it's implied that recently the Boba Fett arc from last week had happened very recently. She begins to be haunted by premonitions that Padme was going to be assassinated, and as the visions become more and more clear, she sees Aura Singh, the character that had raised young Boba Fett in the Boba Fett arc, is alive. In fact, there's a little line that they said, Aurra Sing survived. I didn't even think for a second that she had died, but so like in a few of the previous episodes, Ahsoka is still honing her Force abilities. We've seen examples in some of the previous episodes that we've covered of Ahsoka really trying to focus and clear her mind for the first time, and that's her real struggle in this arc, is that Yoda is just trying to guide her to make sure that she's doing the right thing, and she follows Padme to Alderaan, where Padme is holding a summit about a critical issue, and it's there that Ahsoka foresees that the assassination attempt will occur.
Ahsoka, it's so good to see you. How have you been?
Honestly, I've been better. I'm worried for you, Senator. I sense you are in grave danger.
What makes you believe that?
I've been having dreams. Bad dreams. Padme, I know you're in danger. I just know it.
What kind of danger?
I believe that a very dangerous bounty hunter is out to assassinate you.
Right, we skipped over 2 things I need to mention about this episode. Well, 3 things. First is that I loved this episode. Second is that the scene where she goes to meet Yoda to discuss her Force premonitions. Did anyone else notice that when Yoda said, "Come in, young Tano," or whatever, he was like staring at a wall?
Yeah.
He was just staring at a wall for no reason.
It looked deep, Keats.
I thought you were going to talk about how it clearly mirrors Revenge of the Sith and Anakin's conversation with Yoda.
Premonitions. Telling you something, they are.
I know I reported otherwise, but I believe that Aurra Sing isn't dead. She's still alive, and she's preparing to kill someone close to me.
So, you begin to see the true power of the Force. Visions they are. Underestimate them. You must not. Meditate. To see clearly, more experience you need.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even the lighting. The colors in the episode are like very...
blinds.
Yeah, everything is like very muted in this episode.
And then it was just like, I think it was the same shot, like close-up shot of Ahsoka that it was of like Anakin.
Oh, when like he tilts his head down?
When he tilts his head down, yeah.
Oh, thinking about it now, this is also like another example of like taking one moment from the prequels and like expanding on it into a whole episode with a character, because that's what happened with Lightsaber Lost. That was like the whole, this weapon is your life. They turned that into a whole episode, and now they turn this whole idea of like having a premonition about Padme and not knowing what to do about it into its whole own little episode as well, while Ahsoka's honing her powers for the first time.
I really love this mini-series idea of just like taking ideas and
a random line from the prequels.
Yeah, and then expanding a whole 20-minute episode about it.
Well, I mean, isn't that what they did with like Han Solo? He's like, I've outrun Corellian ships, and then they like made him
except
from
they
Corellia.
made it 2.5 hours.
Yeah, true.
The third thing I wanted to mention is that amazingly tight hug between Padme and Ahsoka. I thought it was so sweet. My heart felt very warm inside.
It was a quality hug.
Yeah, I mean, I figured like they would like greet each other and maybe hug in like a very formal way, but they were like really like closely hugging like family. This is like the first episode, I think, where you see Padme as kind of like a maternal figure for Ahsoka. Like that scene where they're playing chess, the kinship between them is like very apparent.
I got a more like just like girlfriend vibe.
I would have gotten, I don't know, for me it was like when the chess scene was happening, I got more of like a mother-daughter advice relationship thing going on, just because of like how small she seemed in comparison to Padme.
True.
Not just physically, but also like she's like balled up, and she's like balled up emotionally, and she's like trying to get her through all of her stress. And I mean,
she puts like her arm around her, like.
Yeah, and I mean, in all honesty, like this whole thing could be taken as like a metaphor for like adolescence. Like she's like going through a lot of changes and new things. New Force areas are popping up in weird places. And Padme's like, I remember when I was younger. But you see what I'm saying, right?
I see what you're saying.
Okay.
No, yeah, I see it now. I do. I didn't really see anything when I was crying my eyes out, though, when they played Leia's theme.
I really wanted to cry.
I was very close to crying.
It was really intense moment. I was explaining to you guys, like, it started playing immediately, and then immediately I just got covered in goosebumps and just started crying, and I was like, what is happening right now? I'm like, why am I crying?
I think Alderaan as the location, it made sense, and the use of Leia's theme made sense overall. And even just going off of what you're saying, like as a story about adolescent, change and transition into young adulthood, when you think of like an iconic like female character that's really impactful for kids and like as a role model, like I can't think of one more impactful than Leia. And then now we have Ahsoka, who's really, probably between Ahsoka and Rey, like they're the most like lauded female characters in Star Wars now. And Ahsoka is, I think Ahsoka has ties to Leia in that way, in terms of just like the cultural impact. And then also the fact that, I think this whole episode and kind of this whole arc, I think I said it before, is kind of almost like a girl power episode. It's Ahsoka and Padme, and the villain is Aurra Sing. And also sort of the set dressing, all the details that make up the episode, the fact that it's on Alderaan, and then the fact that key figures moving around in the background are Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and Padme. And they're all extremely closely tied to Leia.
I totally wish, like, just go back on what you were saying about, like, the whole, this is, like, basically, like, a girl power arc, just, that's really unfortunate, because that first episode was, like, unforgivable. It hurt my feelings. But this episode kind of makes up for it, because I think that Ahsoka and Padme's dynamic worked extremely well.
Padme is sort of a maternal figure towards Ahsoka. But at the same time, Ahsoka's the one shouldering sort of all the immediate life or death responsibility in the episode. Ahsoka, in her mind, she's like, well, how can Padme nurture and protect me when I'm the one that has to save her from being killed? So, it's another, example of like that extra pressure being put on, a young Padawan that maybe before the war, before they, had to fear being assassinated, that she wouldn't have had to endure before.
That's true, but she's mostly being a mother in the sense of what she said during the chess scene, which is like she's never done a mission by herself before. This is like the first time she's ever had to like deal with all the problems herself. And so I think like all of, like the guidance came from like how Padme approached things when she was younger and how that can relate to her present situation and so on.
I don't think this is her first mission by herself. She's been on missions by herself where she's had her own like clone battalion. I think she meant she was nervous about her new powers and whether she was right or wrong.
Yeah, because she's the one taking all the initiative here.
Exactly.
It's not just that Ahsoka's leading the mission. It's that it is Ahsoka's mission.
She wasn't sent on a mission.
Sure,
she's not supposed to lead a mission. This is like of her own volition. And so she's like worried.
I kind of agree with you, because I do think it's also a sense of like this newfound independence that she never really got to have before. Because she has like led battalions before, but they're all like under a constructed plan of like a couple Jedi like think taking. This is like the first time, like you said, with where it's like this is Ahsoka's like mission, this is her journey, and I don't think she's ever had an episode where she's had to do that before, aside from Lightsaber Lost. But that's not like a critical life or death mission. That's just like I got to go find this thing I lost.
Well, kind of, because like the gang boss was gonna kill people with it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that is true, and they do touch on that a little bit.
She didn't want that burden on her.
Yeah, and the same thing kind of applies in this episode, where it's all about she doesn't want Padme dying by her hands,
or she doesn't want Padme to think she's crazy because she doesn't know if she's right.
Yeah, it's all of those things.
That's true, Jordan. I think that's like probably one of the most critical moments in the episode, and a huge marker for growth for Ahsoka, where Ahsoka goes up to Padme and apologizes basically and says,
"What is it?" "I'm confused. My visions are telling me one thing, but reality is telling me another. I don't know which to believe anymore. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe no one's out to kill you."
And I feel like that is like just such a huge sign of growth, because even half a season ago, like thinking back to like the Geonosis arc, Ahsoka, like I don't think Ahsoka would have been capable of like doing something like that. Just like walking up,
apologizing.
Well, just walking up and saying everything I'm doing right now could be wrong, and like just being really upfront about that, and not just with Padme but with herself, because it's really a moment of truth, I think, for Ahsoka. That seems particularly now she's in a situation where she really has to trust her instincts, but she's not gonna know until the last minute because of the nature of like the premonition, which I think is really cool, and is something that is used in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith is a great example, and Empire Strikes Back is probably the other big great example. And the Last Jedi as well, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I think the main thing I really appreciate about this episode is that it felt like something like a new obstacle for Ahsoka to tackle. Because everything Ahsoka has to tackle is always just war related, and it's very one note.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're right.
Now she's becoming more of a Jedi. She's accessing new powers that she never had before.
And I think we're seeing Ahsoka diverge from being the Anakin shadow character. I think Ahsoka is really becoming the Ahsoka.
I had this thought in the middle of the episode about Aura Singh. This was kind of in the back of my head because I knew it wouldn't be real because I know the nature of the show and the audience is trying to cater for. But Aura Singh is kind of acting as a dwelling presence for Ahsoka. And she's kind of like a ghost in all of these visions that she has. And so I was thinking could she possibly still be dead? And this is Ahsoka having some kind of stress disorder from the war. And if so, I think that would have made for a lot better, more deep episode for Ahsoka's character. Did any of you guys have that hypothesis when watching this?
I agree with you that it would have been awesome to see that. I was thinking that originally, but I remember watching it and knowing that Aura Singh was there. But I probably would have thought that if I hadn't seen this episode prior.
It's definitely up in the air, especially since Ahsoka says in that moment that we described before that she's doubting herself and she's doubting the accuracy of the vision, which rightfully so. I mean, anytime anyone has a vision in Star Wars, usually there's a
very strong chance it's not correct.
Yeah, or there's an ironic wrinkle to it that is really going to mess over the main characters. So yeah, I think that would have been interesting and would have been a good externalization of all of her messed up feelings about the war, and also thinking about it from her perspective. She's been on the sidelines of the war for a long time after a major military flub, and then her first time really back into the thick of battle in the Boba Fett arc. She may have potentially killed another person, and now those ghosts are coming back to haunt her again. So yeah, I think that's a good interpretation. But pretty quickly, I think halfway through the episode, they go the other route and they show Aura Singh within 10 minutes of the episode.
We don't really see Ahsoka kill anybody. I don't think we see her destroy droids and stuff. I think that was the first on-screen murder that she had. That's a really good
Wait, what do you mean?
Plot point. Maybe that was the first person that she killed, and that was in her mind, and that was haunting her.
Oh yeah.
Because I think I mentioned it in one of the episodes in the Geonosis arc, where
yeah, you got really emotional.
Where Anakin
their music came out of nowhere and started serenading you.
Anakin was killing Geonosins, and I had that thought of I don't want to see Ahsoka killing organics. So yeah, maybe Aura Singh was her first murder.
In actuality, the vision does come to fruition, and actually earlier in the episode, there is a bit of a gaffe where Ahsoka jumps into Padme's bedroom in the middle of the night and starts deflecting blaster bolts that aren't there because Aura Singh is not in her bedroom. But then, of course, at the end of the episode, Padme is in her bedroom again, and that is where the fight happens. So Ahsoka...
I didn't even make that connection.
Yeah, there is an ironic...
Yeah, I didn't make that either.
Yep, there is an ironic connection there where Ahsoka, saw the vision and misinterpreted it as being something else. So that is really the only ironic wrinkle. The rest of it plays pretty safe. Ahsoka just fights Aura Singh. And Aura Singh's captured, right? Did she go to jail?
Yeah, she's taken to jail.
Oh, one thing I did really like after Aura Singh is shuttled off to jail is that we find out that behind this whole thing was Ziro the Hutt, that purple menace from the Clone Wars movie that we haven't seen since then.
Just check in and to say hi.
Well, I really liked for the first time in a while, and I really think for the first time ever, because the way we structure... There was thought put into how we structured these episodes and how we watched them, but not too much effort. So this just sort of happened that it ends basically on a cliffhanger, and as a setup for for 2 episodes that we'll be talking about next week. And I was pretty excited about that. For the first time, there was a little cliffhanger to something to whet my appetite for the next week's episode, where perhaps I would not have been as excited beforehand, even though Quinlan Voss is going to be in the next week's episode. So at the end of the day, 3 random episodes. I had fun.
I hated one of them. I felt indifferent about another one, and then I loved the other one. Pretty much cut even. Got even.
I feel like they're valuable for both furthering the Mandalore arc and furthering Ahsoka's character. I'm like, in my head, rewatching these, like I'm like sort of building like an essentialist list of if I ever wanted to do this marathon again. And yeah, it's hard for me to put these on this list.
Oh, I would say the third episode is definitely essential. 100% to Ahsoka's character. Like to see her growth over this whole show. First episode, completely skippable. I mean, I'm sorry we made you watch it to hear the discussion, but honestly, I thought this is like totally an episode you don't need to see.
I would probably only rewatch the third episode. The first episode is completely skippable. Second episode, I kind of don't really care about any of the kid characters. I do like the ending though, like where they work together with Ahsoka. That was interesting.
I would say it's only watchable because this is the episode, or that's the episode where Prime Minister.
That's true. Where you find out he's a.
Yeah, you find that out, and he also gets arrested, and then you see
same.
later in the seasons that he's in jail. So you wouldn't really be able to get that connection.
That's what probably the only reason I would put. That
Okay, true. And then the third episode's really good and is vital for Ahsoka. So yeah, I agree.
Next week, you will need to watch Season 3, Episode 2, Arc Troopers, Season 3, Episode 4, Sphere of Influence, Season 3, Episode 8, Evil Plans, Season 1, Episode 22, Hostage Crisis, and Season 3, Episode 9, Hunt for Ziro. If you couldn't tell by the episode numbering, there is a lot of jumping around. How are these all going to flesh with each other? You'll have to wait and find out, just like the rest of us. My name is Yates.
My name is Keats.
My name is Jordan.
May
the Force
be
with you.